The anime begins with our protagonist named Makoto, thinking about how an isekai adventure would be, where everything would be amazing. From the classic teleportation to the new world, encountering a kind goddess who grants him powers, or even being adored by all while having great adventures with wonderful heroines by his side. However, his experience turns out to be extremely different. One day, Makoto was living his normal life when suddenly, out of nowhere, while he should have been sleeping, he finds himself floating along with a sphere that seems to be a deity. This deity reveals its appearance and introduces itself as the ruler of the Night King, named Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi states that he has come to take Makoto to a goddess from another world, thanks to his parents who made a pact with her. In exchange for being able to live in Japan, they promised to give the goddess the most valuable thing to them, which happened to be one of their 3 children, and our protagonist was chosen among the 3. After leaving a letter for his family, he is transported to meet the goddess. There, he discovers that she is somewhat troublesome, and unfortunately, she doesn't take a liking to him. She even calls him an ugly duckling and decides to send him to the literal limbo of the world, granting him only the ability to understand non-human languages. The goddess simply dislikes him and literally tosses Makoto into space, discarding him like trash in a dumpster. Tsukuyomi appears and has a conversation with him in midair. We might think he's going to save Makoto, but he only explains that on Earth, his body and powers were under pressure, but it will be different in this new world. Afterward, Tsukuyomi bids him farewell, saying he'll enter a sleep of hundreds of years. He releases Makoto once again to continue falling. True to Tsukuyomi's word, Makoto falls gently. However, the goddess wasn't kidding about sending him to the ends of the world. He lands in the middle of nowhere, and after 3 days, he heads towards a tall mountain, having no other place to go, no food to eat, and no living person around. He's trapped in endless solitude, only hearing the sound of his voice and his growling stomach. Finally, Makoto hears a voice calling for help and gets excited about the possibility of encountering other people. However, he comes across a piglet and a 2-headed dog, which, thanks to the goddess's power, he can understand perfectly. Our protagonist decides to save the piglet and is amazed by its ability. He kills the 2-headed dog in a single blow, leaving the piglet frightened. Despite considering fleeing or fighting, she realizes it's impossible. She introduces herself as Emma, explaining that she was heading towards the mountain to serve as a sacrifice for a dragon named Shine. Emma reveals that her village has been facing problems with a dense fog that stopped their crops from growing. Ever since they started the sacrifices, things have improved. She tells Makoto about a nearby location where they could rest. Makoto is captivated by the piglet and begins to see her as his heroine. He follows her to a place with other pigs, where he finally finds food. He discovers that Emma possesses powers like transportation magic, which seems to be something everyone in this world can do. Makoto asks Emma to teach him something basic, and she teaches him how to cast a fireball. He shows an aptitude for learning, but he also learns that everyone in this world has levels of power. Not knowing his own level, Emma measures it using a piece of paper, assuming he must be level 300. However, they discover that he's just level 1. Emma decides to help him by teaching him other spells. The next day, Makoto disappears, leaving only a thank you letter. In the letter, he explains that he took the spell list and some equipment she gave him. He promises to save her from the sacrifice by facing the invincible dragon Shine. On the way, Makoto decides to train his fire powers, discovering that he can change his form into a bow. He decides to shoot at the only nearby object to practice his aim, but he realizes a bit too late that there were creatures there, which ended up turning into barbecue. However, it's alright because they were villains and the true culprits behind the pig's problems. Thus, Makoto accidentally saved Emma the piglet from the sacrifice. But this guy is unlucky and ends up awakening the nearby dragon Shine, who envelopes everything in a red mist and attacks him. Makoto discovers another power. He can see through the mist and pinpoint the dragon's location. He starts attacking Shine with his fireballs, even managing to injure the fire-resistant dragon. After a few punches from Makoto, the dragon can't take the beating anymore and encloses him in a cube, subjecting him to illusory memories. Of course, the protagonist imagines a beautiful girl begging to date him during his illusion, playing into his unattractive appearance. Shine also becomes fascinated by the images and realizes that Makoto is from another world. Makoto then reveals his growing strength and breaks free from the illusion, but he's surprised to see the dragon acting cute and harmless. Shine proposes a pact that would benefit them both. Makoto would become his master, granting Makoto 80% of his power. Shine transforms into a lovely samurai girl, leaving Makoto disappointed as he had hoped to ride a dragon. Shine explains that her role is to be weaker and in a dominant position, which prevents her from assuming her dragon form. Shine shows Makoto a portal to a subspace in his mind, but upon entering, they find it filled with plants and fruits from the earth due to their pact. Despite being a spacious and cozy place, it's bounded by a misty wall. Makoto contemplates how this place might free him from the goddess's influence. To save the pigs from further sacrifices, Makoto returns to the edge of the world to meet Emma. He introduces her to Shine and explains that the pigs no longer need to be sacrificed. Amid the celebration, Shine invites them to live in his subspace without consulting Makoto, leaving him shocked when he discovers it. They need a cute mini Shine, a fragment of the dragon. Shine transports the entire pig village into the subspace, and after a few days, Makoto discovers that he can control not only fire but also earth, water, lightning, and darkness. He's unable to master air for some reason. Meanwhile, Shine engrosses herself in novels from Makoto's memories and becomes a young lord in the world as the master of the subspace. Tired of her going through his memories, Shine leaves to construct a TV to watch the novels. With memories floating before Makoto's eyes, he recalls his parents and decides to follow their path in that world. As he leaves his residence, he notices the pigs struggling to cut down some trees to make space. Makoto helps them with a tiny knife, but with his immense power, he easily cuts the tree. He discovers he has healing powers too, which he uses to cure a pig's injury. Unfortunately, he accidentally cuts his hand and realizes he can heal others but not himself. Suddenly, Shine returns with an elderly dwarf in her arms, and they realize that the wound on Makoto's hand will attract a creature that's been trailing the dwarf. At that moment, a giant black spider appears, a tormented creature with an eternal form, but Shine refuses to fight it, saying she's too busy holding the dwarf. She explains to Makoto that after the spider sustains some injuries, it will leave on its own. Makoto attacks by severing some of the spider's legs, but its regenerative power is immense, requiring a more potent attack. Makoto goes all out, but he overdoes it, causing the spider to actually become fond of him due to the immense damage he inflicted. Makoto continues to attack, but the spider regenerates and counterattacks, injuring him and feeding on his blood. This makes him nervous, and he launches a series of consecutive attacks on the spider. Eventually, he collapses, drained of strength. Shine rushes to protect him, but it's evident that the spider has fallen in love with him, and his blood has finally satisfied its immense hunger, leading the creature to desire to live with him forever. Shine proposes that she forms a pact with Makoto, similar to what she did, acquiring a more human and less frightening form to please her love. After Makoto is healed, he wakes up to find the spider in her human form, completely smitten. He complains to Shine about the idea, but she insists that it's better than having a giant spider chasing after him. Now, the guy has two monster girls at his beck and call. They ask him to give them new names that he likes. After much contemplation, Shine is renamed Tomoe, and the spider is named Mew. They are both delighted with their new names. Afterward, the dwarf asks permission for his people to live in the subspace, and before Makoto knows it, a bunch of people are living there with him, leaving him bewildered. He discovers that, in addition to the pigs and dwarves, there are Tomoe's clan, the lizards, and Mew's clan, the spiders. With so many creatures around him, Makoto decides to find human villages to prevent himself from going crazy. After a while of searching, he finally encounters a girl who runs away from him in fear. He follows her, confused, and when he arrives at the village, everyone is ready to attack him. Makoto realizes that he gained the ability from the goddess to understand non-human languages, meaning he couldn't understand his own people's language. To worsen matters, he learns that the language of humans is the world's universal language, spoken by everyone. However, the villagers explain that he didn't scare them because of language, but because of the immense amount of mana radiating from him, making him appear demonic. Thus, Makoto resolves to learn the language and obtain equipment to suppress his magic. After a month of training, he can only listen, read, and write in the language but can't speak it. Fortunately, he discovers that he can literally write in the air. The dwarves give him a ring that suppresses his power, changing its color to red when reaching its limit. Makoto, accompanied by Tomoe and Miu, sets off for the human city. He wears a mask to avoid being recognized and realizes that everyone in this world is much more attractive than him. He understands that in this world, he's genuinely unattractive. Later, they spot an adventurers guild and decide to head there. At the guild, they claim Makoto is cursed and unable to speak, communicating only through writing. The girl explains that everyone joining the guild starts at rank E and progresses as they complete missions, with the highest rank being SSS. When they measure the girls' levels, Tomoe is at 1320 and Miu at 1500, leaving everyone astonished by their power. Tomoe is irritated that she's below Miu. When they measure Makoto's level, he discovers he's still at level 1, despite all his progress in the past months. They also learn that a girl named Sophia, the Dragon Slayer, currently holds the top rank. Upon arriving at their lodging, Makoto gets startled by the price, but Tomoe intimidates the innkeeper, who quickly lowers the cost for them. Once settled, our protagonist decides to go out with Miu, leaving Tomoe behind to guard their cart against thieves. As Tomoe is left to guard the cart alone, the two of them head out to eat together, with Miu being infatuated. However, they accidentally bump into a street urchin named Rainon, who asks for their help. Back at the inn, Rainon explains that her sister went out to find work and hasn't returned. Meanwhile, Tomoe ends up killing the guys who attempted to challenge her and captures the sole survivor for interrogation. She returns to the inn, and Makoto starts scolding her. However, upon seeing Rainon, he ends the argument and leaves Tomoe grateful to the young girl. Makoto offers Rainon a bed and food, and she hands him a drawing to help them locate her sister. Later, through the memories of the prisoner, they discover that the group that attacked their carriage was responsible for Rainon's sister's disappearance. Makoto orders Tomoe and Miu to rescue her sister, taking it more seriously than usual because Rainon's sister resembles a girl from Makoto's world whom he liked. The two monster girls aren't thrilled about this new order, but they chose to serve him, so they can't complain. While Makoto and Rainon sell some fruits from the subspace, it's revealed that Rainon actually knows exactly what happened to her sister. She had been unable to fulfill her task and ended up being captured as a debt repayment. She was coerced into approaching Makoto to steal from him, with the intent of using the stolen items to pay off her sister's debt and secure her freedom. At the same time, her sister, named Tua, is saved by Tomoe and Miu. The locals attempt to hinder the rescue, believing themselves to be strong, but the two monster girls effortlessly defeat them, crushing them like bugs with their abilities. Meanwhile, Rainon, unaware that her sister is being rescued, finds herself in a dilemma. She doesn't want to steal from Makoto, who has been kind to her, but she also needs to save her sister. After the successful rescue, Tomoe and Miu start to compete to prove who is stronger by literally destroying everything. Toa and Rainon reunite in a heartwarming moment, ending the day in an embrace at the inn. Makoto punishes Tomoe and Miu by throwing them as a penalty for destroying the city. The next day, Makoto leaves with Toa's group for new cities. They discover that Tomoe had altered the memories of the people to make them believe that monsters were responsible for the city's destruction and to prevent anyone from recalling that it was Miu and Tomoe who caused it. With the city destroyed, everyone needs to re-register at the Adventurers Guild. Tomoe decides that this time she will be a level above Miu, setting off to train and surpass her. Miu is excited at the prospect of having Makoto to herself, forgetting that they have other companions on the journey to new cities. They encounter various creatures on their journey, and Makoto repeatedly asks Miu to defeat them, while Toa and her group collect valuable parts from the creatures. However, Miu gets tired and refuses to continue doing all the work. Makoto questions why Toa doesn't slay the creatures, but they explain that Ruby Eyes, the monsters, would easily kill them. Makoto decides to take matters into his own hands and takes down the creatures with pinpoint accuracy using his arrows. This impresses the group, and they manage to collect 12 Ruby Eyes eyes. They return to re-register, but Makoto's level remains at 1. He insists that Mew should register only when Tomoe returns. Makoto then decides to check the guild's available missions, regardless of his level. He comes across an S-level mission that seeks Ruby Eyes, which he had collected. He shares the loot with the group, keeping 12 eyes and leaving the rest for them. Makoto then suggests they celebrate the end of their journey by eating together. Toa selects a fantastic restaurant for them, where they learn more about her group. Louisa is an elf blessed with archery skills, Hazal is a master alchemist, Ranina is a night priest, and Toa herself is a shadow thief. All of them have high levels. After dinner, Makoto and Mew return to their lodging, but he asks her to go ahead so he can get the materials from the cart. Mischievously, she contemplates being alone in the room with him and even considers removing one of the beds to force them to sleep together. However, he returns earlier than expected and quickly falls asleep, leaving Mew completely frustrated. The next day, the two of them return to the subspace, with Makoto now capable of creating portals. They meet Emma and the fragment of Tomoe, who updates him on everything. She informs him about the roles each group has taken on. The spiders have settled in the mountains, the dwarves are working on repairs and equipment, the lizards are cleaning the farms, and the pigs are building a residence for their master Makoto. He's astonished by the size of the construction, but Emma explains that it's not an issue since they established their work methods based on his saved memories from Tomoe. At this moment, the dwarf arrives to show Makoto some armor his clan has crafted for him. However, he prefers a protective overcoat. After wearing it, he discovers that the coat changes color, blue for defense and red for mobility, allowing him to move faster. It also absorbs a certain amount of magic, which quickly reaches its limit. Makoto asks the dwarf to create a new coat that can endure longer, similar to the ring. Following this, our protagonist finally visits a client named Henbrain to complete the mission and deliver the Ruby Eyes. The client assumes Makoto must be mistaken, as the task is considered impossible for someone at level 1. Nonetheless, Makoto hands over the eyes, leaving Henbrain astonished. He explains that the eyes are needed to create a remedy to cure his wife and daughters of an illness caused by a curse from a dead sorcerer. Makoto asks to witness the remedy being made and suggests that he knows an alchemist who could perform the task. However, Henbrain clarifies that they need 2 Ruby Eyes per person. Makoto reveals that he has many more eyes with him, which delights Henbrain and his household. Subsequently, Makoto registers with the Merchants Guild to be able to trade. There, he learns he needs to pass 2 tests, a written test for which he has a manual to prepare and a practical one that requires obtaining valuable or difficult materials within 3 days. He purchases the manual and intends to study for the written test, but he ignores his plan and attempts the test immediately, surprising the receptionist. The written test appears challenging, but the content is similar to basic education on Earth. Makoto finishes the test with a top score in less than half the time, astonishing the instructor. He proceeds to the practical test, where he must acquire 3 difficult or equivalently valuable materials within 3 days. The professor doubts his success, but when Makoto presents some of the red bee parts collected during his journey with Toa's group, the professor is even more impressed. Makoto successfully enters the guild. Meanwhile, Tomoe is seen training and defeating a giant crab, using it as sustenance in the subspace. After a while, Makoto returns there too with a plan to build a good reputation for the fruits and sell them at a better price, all while avoiding suspicion about the subspace city. Suddenly, Tomoe calls him to the location of her memories, claiming that she has something to discuss with Mew. He hurries over, thinking there's a major problem, but he discovers that they have become addicted to the anime and novels from his memories. Now, he has both a novel addict and an anime enthusiast by his side. Back at the lodging in the human city, there are only 2 beds for the 3 of them. The 2 girls try to make Makoto choose which one he'll sleep with, but he opts to sleep on the couch. It becomes quite a complex situation, as he's not only unattractive but also oblivious. The girls decide they need to come up with a plan later to win him over. The next day, our protagonist meets with Hazal to meet Henbrain and create the remedies using the Ruby Eyes. They are followed by 2 adventurers who want to prevent Henbrain from achieving his goal. Arriving at Henbrain's house, Hazal becomes nervous upon learning they are working for him, given his reputation as a dangerous individual. Despite his reluctance, he's already there, so he starts preparing the potions. While delivering the first vial to the worker Mores, Hazal drops the other two, prompting Makoto to do his best to save them. After the commotion, they reconvene with Hainbrain and find him injured, unable to administer the potion to his wife. He recounts how, at the onset of the disease, it seemed like a simple fever, but gradually, his wife and daughters lost their hair, their eyes turned red, and they lost their reason, attacking anything that approached. Makoto suggests a plan. He immobilizes them, allowing Hainbrain to give them the potions. They visit Hainbrain's wife, where Makoto realizes that she no longer bears many human traits. He successfully immobilizes her, and though Hainbrain gets bitten, he administers the potion, curing his beloved wife. After saving one of the daughters, the clumsy Hazal nearly drops the last vial again, but Mores saves it. Makoto proceeds to treat the last daughter, who still has some awareness left. After the three of them take the potion, Hainbrain expresses his gratitude to both Makoto and the goddess. Makoto realizes the goddess might not be the kindest deity, but that's okay. On their way out, Makoto meets Miu and Tomoe. The three of them are attacked by the guys who had been following them. Tomoe and Miu offer to switch sides, and Miu agrees to stay out of the fight in exchange for payment. To Tomoe's surprise, Makoto had requested this to prevent them from clashing again. They attempt to fight alone, but despite his partner's defeat, Lime, one of the attackers, pleads for Tomoe's help after reading his thoughts. She learns that Lime helps children at an orphanage and decides to spare him. Lime reveals that they didn't intend to wake up Hainbrain's family. He claims that the sorcerer told them the curse would only put them to sleep, as a lesson for Hainbrain to reconsider the way he makes adventurers suffer in their missions. But upon discovering what the sorcerer had actually done, he apologizes to Hainbrain, who demonstrates generosity by sparing his life and punishing him solely by removing him from the Adventurers Guild. Later, Tomoe meets Lime and offers him a dwarven-made katana to replace the sword she had broken during the fight. She proposes that he work as her spy in exchange for a good amount of money. Back in the subspace, Emma informs them about a new problem. The pig warriors and the lizards didn't seem content with training alongside them. Makoto decides to spy on the pigs to find out the reason for their discontent. He learns that they disliked his training methods, which were too harsh and made them feel like failures. Tomoe returns with news that the lizards were also unhappy for the same reason, revealing her disappointment with her own clan. While Miu is fascinated by tomatoes unique to the subspace, Makoto and Tomoe contemplate how learning would be easier if the pigs and lizards worked together instead of hiding their techniques from each other. Tomoe proposes a plan. They gather both clans and have the strongest warrior from each clan fight each other. After a challenging battle in which both sides showcased their abilities, the pig emerges victorious. Tomoe then gives a stern speech, stating that they should be stronger than they currently are. She announces that from now on, once a week, everyone will engage in individual contests between clans to assess their progress. This idea would eventually extend to other clans, allowing them to learn from each other to improve their skills. Although the clans are initially apprehensive, Makoto delivers a motivational speech that boosts their morale. Tomoe names the event the Subspace Ranking. Later, they return to the Adventurers Guild where Tomoe is disappointed to find that she's still at a lower level than Miu. After registering with the guild, the receptionist mentions that many adventurers, like Lime, have retired or are recovering from injuries, without realizing that it's due to their attack on Makoto. She asks Makoto for help in training an adventurer to increase the number of high-ranking guild members. He suggests that Tomoe trains Toa's group, but knowing Tomoe's demanding style, he asks her to lighten up a bit. However, she continues to push them hard, demanding a lot. She eventually has the group face a small group of high-level Shadow Tales creatures. Instead of lowering her expectations, Tomoe freezes the creatures momentarily to coordinate the group. With the right strategy, they manage to defeat all the creatures. She then instructs to prepare for defeating an entire band the next day before leaving him alone in the forest. A day passes, and the receptionist becomes concerned about their safety upon learning of Tomoe's training methods. However, the group returns exhausted after defeating not one but two entire bands of creatures. Meanwhile, Makoto asks Hainbrain for a space to open his shop. Hainbrain mentions a neutral city where he could open a store without restrictions. Makoto is excited about having his own shop. In the forest, a group of adventurers enters the area where Toa's group had hunted the creatures, unaware that they are being watched by two guardians of the forest, Eris and Aqua. The guardians swiftly incapacitate them. In the subspace, Makoto discovers a surprise party celebrating their merchant guild's success. The Mew clan has assumed a more human-like appearance to please their master. During the festivities, he talks with the dwarf, asking if he ever feels confined since he never leaves the subspace. The dwarf denies it, claiming it's a wonderful place to live. Nevertheless, Makoto offers the dwarf the opportunity to help in his store in the human city, selling his materials. The dwarf is excited. Later, Mew and Tomoe have a peaceful conversation when they suddenly feel through their connection with Makoto as if he had died and come back to life. They assume he's in a life-or-death battle but are relieved to see that he's perfectly fine, training his archery skills. However, they are still shaken, feeling that he has died a few times. Makoto explains that he empties his mind to focus on the target, and they explain that people usually empty their minds that way only when they die. He does it unintentionally each time he concentrates, returning to life with even more mana, reaching a power level similar to that of a god, and continuing to expand the subspace, making it harder to conceal his power, which could cause issues with the goddess, whom he knows dislikes him. Therefore, he decides to stop training archery for safety reasons. Later, while walking in the human city, Makoto accidentally bumps into a seductive young woman who flirts with him. However, Mew and Tomoe drag him away, taking him back to the hotel. They question if they weren't enough for him and, consumed by jealousy, trap him in his room, trying to force him to choose between them. They even tear his shirt off, but in desperation, he uses his power to escape to the subspace. The next day, Mew feels remorseful for scaring her master and apologizes. Makoto reassures her that it's fine and invites her to accompany him to negotiate for some flowers with one of the forest guardians. The flowers would be valuable for his store, and she's thrilled by the prospect of being alone with her master again. There, they encounter a group of adventurers attempting to steal the flower, but Mew immobilizes them with her web and they proceed to negotiate with the guardians. However, the group of thieves arrives, disrupting Makoto's plans and making them think he's aligned with the thieves. This doesn't sit well with Mew. As they're attacked, Makoto realizes that one of the thieves is the same woman who had flirted with him the day before. He asks Tomoe for help, who had been observing from a distance. He instructs her to send the thieves to the subspace before they get hurt. After calming Mew by giving her some of his blood, she blocks their attack, allowing Makoto to explain the misunderstanding. He clarifies that he's merely a merchant trying to negotiate. They then lead them to their village, where they meet an elder who reveals that the forest ogres are ancestors of the elves, and they created and protected the forest using a barrier made by a dragon, which was weakening. Soon after, Makoto meets Elisa's master. At Makoto's request, Mew spies on him and senses that he's possessed by a spirit. After relaying this to Makoto, he asks her to switch places with Tomoe. Later, while meeting the forest ogres, a spirit leaves the body of one of them, revealing itself as a lich. It's sent to the subspace by Tomoe. Makoto discovers that Tomoe had been the dragon who created the mist for them. She explains that she is now Makoto's servant and instructs them to respect him. Back in the subspace, the lich reveals that he was a human who infiltrated the ogres to study their abilities and become a Grants, a superior human who can travel between worlds. Accidentally, he turned into a lich. However, Tomoe explains that Grants are actually people who accidentally ended up in other worlds, something so difficult and dangerous that it's almost a suicide mission. This devastates the lich, who now has no purpose. As Makoto wants to learn more magic from someone experienced, Tomoe suggests that he becomes a servant to Makoto, like her and Mew. The lich agrees, returning to his human appearance. Tomoe suddenly collapses, seriously wounded in the head due to an explosion in the subspace. Makoto and the lich rush to the scene, shocked by the number of wounded creatures. Makoto treats one of the members of Mew's clan, whose life hangs by a thread. The lich says he can't save him alone, so Makoto helps stabilize the creature's condition. A child arrives, warning them that a pig is trying to stop the humans responsible for the chaos. Makoto heads there and, upon arriving at the explosion site, experiences memories of an adventurer attacking his subspace people. he discovers that both the pig and Tomoe's fragment are dead. Makoto encounters another adventurer and decides to end her life, leaving her terrified. She pleads for mercy, but he eliminates her coldly, crying afterward for what he has done. The next day, they hold a ceremony in honor of Tomoe's fragment and the pig. Later, Makoto asks his servants if, upon making a pact with them, he acquires their powers. He explains that he could see the memories of the girl he eliminated using Tomoe's power. However, Miu becomes jealous once again, leading to another argument between the two. After some time, Makoto decides to create a division within the subspace to prevent vulnerable creatures' children from coming into contact with adventurers. He finds out that the injured elk is recovering well. He then expresses his feelings to a friend of the deceased pig, apologizing for not being able to keep everyone safe. To his surprise, they're all grateful to Makoto and don't blame him for what happened. Later, Makoto informs his servants that he will embark on a long journey with the Lich to learn more about the world, the goddess, and his parents' journey. As parting gifts, he gives more memories to Miu and Tomoe. With this, they embark on their journey, but as soon as they leave the subspace, the goddess locates Makoto and transports him to a distant location, leaving his three servants worried. In this unfamiliar place, Makoto is attacked and loses 2 fingers at the hands of the world's strongest adventurer, Sophia, and her wounded dragon, Lancer. He tries to call his servants, but none respond. He learns that he has been summoned by the goddess into the middle of a war between demons and humans, with Sophia siding against her own kind. Mistakenly placed in the path of the demons by the goddess, the humans assume he's there to defend them. Forced into a battle, Makoto unleashes his immense power, overwhelming Sophia and Lancer. He later wakes up alongside his beloved servants. Eventually, the Lich deduces that the goddess sent him to the war and manipulated events to force him to fight. She will undoubtedly continue to watch him closely. Makoto then decides to go out only with Lich, as the goddess probably already knew about him, and leaves Miu and Tomoe as an ace up his sleeve. He later discovers that Tomoe had created a new fragment of herself, named Komoe, a cute little girl just like the previous one. Komoe refers to Makoto as daddy, which, as usual, makes Miu extremely jealous. After this, Makoto makes another discovery. The forest ogres are also in the subspace, being trained by the community's clans. In the human world, our protagonist finally opens his store, which becomes a great success due to its exclusive materials. Back in the subspace, he reflects on how everything began and how he has come so far, while Miu and Tomoe once again drive him crazy with their fights. This marks the end of the first season of the anime. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Thanks.